Hey everyone, welcome to Over 50 Starting Over, and today I am with Elizabeth Sherman. She is a life and weight loss coach. She's also an expat to Mexico. Her and her husband moved there 5 years ago. I find this very interesting as Mexico City's been in the news of late quite a bit about their problems with the expatriates from America as our housing prices continue to escalate. But she's also the host of the podcast Done with Dieting, and she's a certified life coach, health coach, nutrition coach on a number of levels, and personal trainer certified in all of these. So very interesting. And we got to learn a lot from the expatriate point of view, how to do business there, the levels of citizenship that you can do there, but also a lot. I kind of embarrassingly tried to represent my female audience with questions on dieting and nutrition for the female point of view. So look at it as a comedy in that respect. Bear with us. Whatever. Hey, we're off to a great start. Welcome to Over 50 Starting Over, everyone. I'm Barry Edwards, and I'm here with Elizabeth Sherman, and we are going to talk about all kinds of things. I just lost your notes. Where they go? Here they are. You are the host of the podcast Done with Dieting, and Elizabeth is a certified life coach, health coach, level 1 and 2 nutrition coach, not level 1 and 2 of metabolic effect. Okay. And a certified personal trainer. You spend your life getting certified in things.
I have done lots of different certifications, yes.
And something I find extremely interesting is you just did the expat thing to Mexico in 2017, was it?
Yeah, we've been here for 5 years now, just over.
Yeah, has it gone by fast or what?
Yes and no. And so what's interesting is, as of recording right now, we moved in April of 2017, and we've been renting for the past 5 years and building a new house for the past 2 years. And
Oh,
last week we moved in. So it's very timely and it's so exciting.
no, I have heard this in the past. You just made me think about it. I've heard in the past that the only problem with moving to Mexico and building your house is you never really own the land, that they could take it back at any time.
Yeah, okay, so yes and no. There is a law in Mexico, which is actually a really smart law, that within X number of miles of their border, foreign people who are not citizens, cannot own land.
Oh,
Because think about it from
we'd
a
take over.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. You could take over like a
Hmm.
stretch of land and like invade the country.
Yeah.
And so what happens is, to get around that, the bank actually owns the land and we pay them to administer it. And so
Hmm.
it's not unsafe.
Okay.
There are some unsafe business practices down here, but this specific one is not. Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about safety. I got so many different questions. I'm going to skip
Okay.
all around,
Let's dig in.
and I'm just starting with the ones my personal questions, not the canned ones or anything. What about safety? And first of all, do you want to divulge where in Mexico you are? Is that okay?
Yeah. So I live in a really tiny community halfway in between Cancun and Playa del Carmen.
Okay. And I remember researching very recently that the Yucatan Peninsula is very popular for expats.
Yeah.
But Mexico City has been in the news a lot lately. There's been several articles, one of which I just had up, and I got so many windows open though. But it's in the LA Times, and it's from a Mexican American. She was talking about how people in Mexico are getting so upset, and there's the division in California, in the U.S., amongst the left and the right, and so people are moving, and then it's causing animosity in Mexico, in particular Mexico City, where even some of the political figures there are getting upset that English is becoming the first language in many parts.
Mm.
Yeah, that it's
Hmm.
really taking over the culture. Property values are starting to really rise as a
Yeah.
result. And
Mhm.
I think that in property values in the US in the last 10 years across the US have gone insane.
Mhm.
So this seems inevitable to me. And it's not just Mexico. I've been doing a little bit of research about the expat thing, and uh, Taiwan has been big for a long time, which it's so far away. It's like 26-hour plane ride or something. So that's one of the I got that open in a window somewhere here, but one of the most popular places is, I can't find it right now, and it's somewhere in Malaysia, a city I can't pronounce. It's very popular. And well, this is going on across the world, a lot of places in Europe. So I guess, the internet made us a global economy. And now 20, 30 years later, we're starting to, water is going to start finding its common level at some point.
Yeah. And so definitely people are moving, not only from the US, but also Canada are moving to Mexico because it is more economical to live here.
Yes.
Um,
Oh, yeah.
and what's what's really interesting is that it's economical because the wages are lower here. And so the same type of problem is actually happening in this area as well, that we built a beautiful house and there's no way that someone who was local could possibly move into this house. And it's happening. So the town that I live in is actually divided by a mile and a half of jungle that's
Hmm.
preserved. So it's protected.
Oh.
And so there's what's called the beach side, and then there's the colonia, which is where most of the working folks live. It's
Hmm.
more of like a city. And um, there are people here who want to live beachside, but they can't afford rent beachside. And so they're buying property in the colonia, and then that's driving house and rents up
Hmm.
over there. And it's really um, pushing the locals out of their own space. Yeah.
Right. Kind of inevitable. Now let's talk about safety for a minute.
Yeah.
You said that you have this nice barrier of jungle, but I do remember just some months ago, maybe 4 or 5 months ago, I remember reading a news report about, I think it was I think it was the beach of Cancun or
Mm-hmm.
Playa del Carmen that
Uh-huh.
was surged by 5 cartel members on jet skis, like big, expensive jet skis with machine guns. Got off, just left the jet skis. They don't care about $10,000 a piece, and are shooting the machine guns in the air. And that was about the extent of the news. It seemed like it was just a little way of letting everyone know you're never really safe. We are really in control. That's what I got out of it. Did you remember that?
I can't speak to that event because I don't know anything about it. I didn't hear about it.
Okay.
And so I can't really talk about that specific thing. What I can talk about is my own experience with personal safety. And be aware that just like the United States, Mexico is a very large country. Now, it's actually kind of funny that you're bringing this up because the United States is not the safest place either. You can be in a grocery store, or you could be in a movie theater, or a mall, or a school and get shot there. I personally feel much safer here in Mexico
Hmm.
because generally what's happening is your personal safety isn't at risk if you're not doing anything illegal.
Mm.
So if you're mixed up with like drugs or anything like that, then you might be doing some shady stuff. But if you're keeping yourself to yourself and you're minding your own business and you're just on the up and up, like the cartel does not want tourism to go away, right?
Right. Makes sense. Right.
So why it would not be in their best interest to drive tourists away from this area?
So, in general, you have to say you feel as safe there as you do in the US, is what you're saying.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And yeah, as far as my personal safety, I I do live in Mexico and I am wealthier than most of the locals, so I just have to be cognizant of like where my purse is and things like
Mm.
that. So that's really the only
Sure.
thing that I would have to say that I'm a little bit more on edge about. but that could happen in Chicago, New York,
Yep.
LA, any place else as well.
Yeah, they just might have their eye on you a little bit more as you seem foreign and, well, at least somewhat wealthy.
Well,
Uh,
and actually, that's a really good reason why we moved down here.
mm,
When we used to visit here on vacation, we noticed that no one here really cared about what you were wearing. Like in the United States, everything is about designer bags and, designer cars or expensive cars. And there's a lot of flash going on
mm,
in the United States. And here, people wear the same thing like from Old Navy, and, it's all very generic. And if you are throwing around like a Louis Vuitton bag or, expensive jeans, people are going to notice that. It actually becomes a negative for
yeah, I
you. And
see.
so what it's done is it's really allowed us to get away from that kind of rat race of needing to buy more and more and more and more and
That's
consume.
nice.
Yeah.
That is very nice. What about you mentioned cars, kind of car. What kind of car do you have down there? Did you purchase it from there? Did you get it from the States and drive it over? How does that work?
Yeah. So we actually drove my husband's Jeep Wrangler down with a trailer.
Mhm.
It took us 5 days from Austin, Texas to drive
Oh,
here.
wow.
And since then, we've actually purchased a Honda CRV.
Hmm.
And that was actually a really interesting process because here in Mexico, there is no haggling on cars. The price that you see on the internet is actually the price you pay in the dealership. It's just like, this is the car we have. Do you want it or not?
Hmm. Well,
And
that's
so
kind
it
of
was actually very stress free.
no, that's nice since the days of old when before the internet nobody knew what was up,
Hmm.
very disadvantageous for the buyer. What about citizenship?
What about it?
Well, did you have to get a form of citizenship in Mexico? Do you have dual
So
citizenship?
there are three there are three different levels of visas. There's what's called your tourist visa, which is what you would get if you came here on vacation. Okay. And it's actually really interesting talking about that a little bit because in, I don't know if it's in response to the United States immigration policy, but there are a lot of US people who come here on tourist visas. And what you have to do to renew it is you just have to leave the country for a period of like a day and then you can come back. However, they've started cracking down on that a lot more. Actually, I think in response to the US pointing the finger at Mexico, saying that all immigrants coming into the US are coming in through the Mexican border.
Mm,
And so what's happened is that people who can't afford to live in the United States have been living here, but they've been living here undocumented.
mm,
And so it's actually a really fascinating experience to see because the US is cracking down on immigration there, but the Mexican government is also cracking down on immigration here. So if you do not have your paperwork together, there have been a number of situations where someone has a house here, they have animals, they have, a partner, whatever, and when they try to get back in the States, if they don't, or into Mexico, if they don't have their temporary or permanent residency, then what happens is sometimes they will, at the customs and immigration, they'll say you only have 5 days or you can't come into the country at all.
oh my God.
Yeah, it's 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 common. And so
Yeah.
anyway, as I mentioned, there's two different levels of residency. We have what's called permanent residency, and there's also a temporary residency. And so permanent residency is one step down from citizenship. It does not afford us the right to vote,
Mm,
but it gives us most other rights. We are essentially seen by the Mexican government as citizens
mhm.
of Mexico. And then the temporary residency is similar, but the goal is to actually get to permanent.
Okay. Okay. Thanks for clearing a lot of that up. I really appreciate it. I've had a
Yeah.
lot of questions about that.
Hmm.
I have a friend that he was supposed to go to Portugal, another big expat destination,
Yeah.
and he just switched his plans at the last minute. That was supposed to be next month in September, but I wanted to interview him about that when he
Yeah.
got back and all of his research, but maybe in the near future. Let's talk about your health and your wellness business,
Yeah.
how you do it from there. And I love the fact that I'm finally talking to a woman because I'm always talking to men. And I have a kind of a large female following, and they don't get represented enough on here.
Hmm.
Now, as with every guy over 50, I'm 56 now. I'm totally out of my element, even asking you questions about health and wellness from a female point of view.
Yeah.
Hormonal things will come in there at some point. That's where we just tap out. We don't know what to say at that point.
Right.
Let's start with you have a leading statement in your profile about I help my clients identify and overcome limited beliefs and turn around negative thought patterns in their life so they can get consistent with their health habits. Uh, I've talked a lot about overcoming limited beliefs on this podcast. There are some wonderful guided meditations, self
Hmm.
hypnosis on YouTube that can help in that regard. What do you how do you work with clients on identifying them and overcoming them limited beliefs?
Yeah. Well, so first of all, I work primarily with women and I work with them in the area of health and weight loss, although not specifically in weight loss, but um, I do work with women specifically. But what's really interesting is that men's hormones actually shift as they age as well. And so what happens is when we get older, our bodies become more sensitive to insulin and they become more reactive to stress. And why this is important is because we've all probably noticed that we can't eat the same things that we used to be able to eat and then go exercise it off. And so, what happens with a lot of my clients is that they're like, it's not working anymore. Like, I used to be able to go out for some drinks and have some food and kick back with my friends and then just go for a run and my body would kind of snap back into shape. But it's getting more and more difficult for me to, do that anymore. And so what's happened, how it's as far as limiting beliefs goes, what I do is I work with my clients on their relationship with food and their bodies. And so, what I find with a lot of my clients is that we've never established a really good relationship with food. We use food as a way of self soothing or we use, I mean, so many of us use alcohol as a way of getting rid of weekly stress or daily stress. And so what happens is when we start to use food and alcohol in this manner, we really start to abuse it. And what I really help my clients do is look at their relationship with food so that we don't have good foods and bad foods anymore. All foods fit in the whole diet, but really then also paying attention to how food makes you feel. And so we get a little bit more sensitive. Probably a lot of folks who are listening right now have noticed that they can't eat the way that they used to. Like maybe
Yeah.
spicy food doesn't like sit well with you anymore, or maybe it's dairy or meat or whatever it is. You're just starting to notice that food's affecting me a little bit differently, or if I drink too many glasses of wine, I don't sleep as well. And so really starting to connect the dots between what am I eating and how am I feeling so that then we can feel our best, because that's none of my clients, and I'm sure your listeners, we don't want to look like Victoria's Secret models. We don't want to go around looking like bodybuilders. We just want to fit into our jeans and
Yeah.
feel comfortable looking in the mirror. So, and
Yeah.
feel better. Yeah.
How do you regulate that being around Mexican food, authentic Mexican food, which is my favorite by far? By
Uh-huh.
far. I love it. And margaritas and all the fancy tequilas. I mean,
Yeah.
you're a paradise there as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, so okay, that's a perfect example. Like, I don't drink margaritas anymore because they make me feel bad. Like,
Oh.
I can have maybe one margarita, but like that lime sitting in my stomach makes me feel bad. And so I don't drink them anymore. I
Mm.
do drink wine and I do drink straight tequila.
Mm. Mm.
And I love straight tequila.
Yeah.
But again, starting to realize how different foods and alcohols make you feel and
Mm.
what their impact is on you. I probably have guacamole once a week.
I
I probably,
love
and
guacamole.
I know it's
God.
super good.
Yeah.
But I also, what's really interesting, actually, changing the subject just a little bit, is my eating habits have actually changed quite a bit since I moved from the United States. In the United States, processed food was a lot more available in the grocery stores. And
Unfortunately.
I can get American foods here, but they're just more expensive. So I generally eat a lot fresher food.
Mhm.
And yeah, the produce is I shop and cook completely differently than I used to
I'm
living in.
sure it's so much better. I think you would agree that a large part of our diet problem in America is the crappy way we now process our wheat, the gluten problem. My partner, Lisa, 10 years ago, she had to do this elimination diet because she felt so sick. And I mean, this was like dire straits, desperate times type
Yeah.
stuff. And so it was down to eating like nothing as far as variety goes for a month or two. I think it was
Hmm.
60 days maybe. And slowly introducing what she could have that wasn't bothering her. And that's when she found out she could no longer tolerate gluten. And even though I have a body kind of like a tank, nothing upsets my stomach, anything like that, I'll bet you me and everybody else would benefit from not eating that crappy wheat. And
Well, I'm a little bit different. So, like, there's something that I teach my clients, which is what's called a starch um, tipping point. And what that means is that we may not be able to eat pizza every day, but what we can do is we can have some. And
mm,
so listening to your body again, I can tell now how much gluten and sugar, so flour and sugar, I can have in my diet. And here's how I got wise to that was because I started having hot flashes. And
mm,
so in order to get rid of the hot flashes, I had learned that if I limited my sugar and flour, then I could control my hot flashes. And in fact, it worked. So what I did, similar to your partner, I got rid of all flour and sugar for a month. And then I started adding back in one serving, two
mm,
servings, three servings. And now I know that if I keep my flour and sugar servings to about 2 to 3 per week, I'm not going to get hot flashes or night sweats.
mm.
But if I go over, then I will. So then I just need to cut back. So again, making decisions based on how I want to feel in the future as opposed to what looks good in the moment.
Okay. When you talk about sugar, though, like what about fruit? How does that enter in? When you're
I'm really
talking,
just talking about processed sugar, so table
okay,
sugar, stuff like
I
that.
got you.
So
Okay.
honey, agave, fruit, that's all fine. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, that's really good to know. Yeah. The
And
trick is,
everyone's different. So this is
mm,
my experience. Everyone is completely different. You just have to figure out what's right for you.
yeah, the trick is if you get anything processed, fast food or anything, most people literally have no idea how much processed sugar is in all of that stuff. And
Potentially, yeah.
yeah, various names like high fructose corn syrup, we're all familiar with that, but there's something like 90 other names that sound like glucose that are all processed sugar, chemical sugars.
Right. Yeah.
I got a question for you. This is
Yes.
pulling out of your notes. How does health change for women over the age of 45?
Yeah. Well,
Mm,
just like I said, um our bodies become a little bit more sensitive
Hmm.
to what's going on around us. And so, most of us grew up and we were told to put our emotions aside, right? No one teaches us
Mm.
how to deal with sadness or disappointment or frustration or anger. In fact, we're probably told, well, men are told, be angry, you can't be sad, it's not man enough, right? And so we
Oh,
learn to bottle these emotions, right?
until they come out very inappropriately. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what we do, many of us will eat in response or shop or drink in response to like trying to stuff those emotions down.
Yeah.
And so, again, so many of us have not learned how to eat for our body. We walk around like talking heads. We're like this body thing below me. I don't know what's going on there. What you need some water? Didn't I give you water yesterday? Like you have to go to the bathroom. This is so inconvenient. Like
Yeah.
we find our bodies to be inconvenient. And so we try to not pay attention to them. But our body is actually teaching us, it's sending us signals. And those signals could be things like, well, I mentioned hot flashes. You
Mhm.
could have digestion problems, pains and aches and things like that, fullness from hunger, or I should say, being oversatisfied. Like, how many times do we finish a meal and we're like, oh, wait, what just happened here? I just
Yeah.
totally overate. We weren't paying attention. And so one of the things that I really try to do is I try to integrate our bodies back into who we are because the brain and the body are all part of us. Um, and so they're not two separate beings.
Right. Right. So a few months ago, decided to do a cleanse. I was a little fed up with myself and I wanted to lose some weight. And I'd been hearing about intermittent fasting. So I started doing that. And and I have several specials on the podcast about it. And I do want to, and I have said on here several times, don't listen to people when they say intermittent fasting means you can eat anything that you want just within this framework. You're just shooting yourself in the foot right there. But it's been good for me. The way I started it for 2 weeks, and then at that time, I heard a podcast with Bill Maher on there. Yeah, it was Bill Maher, and he's talking about how several times a year he fasts for 5 days at a time. And so I started looking that up during this intermittent fasting period I was doing. And I found all of this really good material about doing 3-day fasts and all their benefits. So I did a 3-day fast at the end of the 2 weeks of intermittent fasting. Grand total is I lost 10 pounds, which I went from 212. I'm 6'2". I went from 214 down to 201, 202. But I stayed with the intermittent fasting and I've been able to maintain it because
Mhm.
of that. I only bring all that up because I have an interest in this that I'm not well educated on. And I
Yeah.
wanted to see your feedback if you think that this is a healthy thing to continue it long term, the
I
intermittent
think,
fasting.
yeah, so really good question. And I think that there's lots of studies to suggest that there is benefit to eating less. However, I'm also going to say that everyone is completely different. And so that strategy may not work for some women. It
Uh,
probably will work better for men, but it
mm,
probably won't work very well for women. So, first of all, let me back up a little bit and talk about intermittent fasting. I find that intermittent fasting does not work for my clients who have food scarcity issues. So when we think that food is scarce, which is kind of crazy because food is everywhere,
I'm not
but
wrapping my head around it yet. So please go on.
food scarcity,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's kind of it's again just having a poor relationship with food and seeing like for example, when we demonize food as being good or bad,
Mm,
what happens is we can't have ice cream, we can't have cookies, we can't have pasta, we can't have all this stuff. So when it's there, we feel like we need to eat all of it.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you have the belief that food is abundant and I can eat whatever I want whenever I want, that doesn't mean that you're going to eat all of it all of the time. It just means that you're paying attention to your hunger signals. You're really tuning in with your body and asking yourself, what do I need right now? Do I need a nap? Do I need a vegetable? Do I need some starch because I'm feeling a little bit hazy or
Mm.
lethargic, and maybe I need some carbohydrates in my system? So, really being able to understand how your body, the signals that your body is sending to you. Okay.
Mhm.
And so, sometimes when it's a choice between broccoli or brownies, you're going to eat the broccoli. But other times you're going to eat the brownies. So like we're never going to get away from 100% emotional eating because we celebrate with food and we
Yeah.
want to do that.
Mhm.
What we want to do though as far as emotional eating goes is we want to stop the unconscious emotional eating. Okay? So when I'm talking about food scarcity, that's really what I'm talking about in terms of not believing that food is abundant and that you can eat it. You feel like you have strict rules around what you can and cannot eat.
Elizabeth, let me ask you this. It's right to your point. Then would you recommend that, at our house that we pretty much have some pizza on tap at any time, maybe some sweets? It's always available. We eat healthy like 90% of the time.
Mhm.
But I know like what you're saying is how many times have I heard we can't have that in the house? I've heard that a lot.
Yeah.
So is that what you're speaking to? Go ahead and
Yeah.
keep it in the house. Just watch how you're making your decisions.
Well, right. So why can't you keep it in the house?
Because I'll eat it, is what I hear. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's
Cheese
really kind of
popcorn.
interesting to start
Yeah.
noticing your thought patterns.
Yeah.
Like right now, I have cookies in the freezer.
Hmm.
They've been there for a month, and I'm not going to go eat them just because I want a cookie. I mean, I could,
Hmm.
but I'm not going to. So, yeah, having it on hand is helpful, but also it's the mindset of not demonizing foods. Like being able to have one cookie and put the container away. Like who can do that? I've
Yeah.
learned how to do that. I was like, those people are aliens.
Oh, I mean, I do understand that. I mean, I'm kind of a glutton. I'm a gluttonous eater. And the typical, I'm a little bit of a bigger guy. And like when Lisa drags me to one of those foo-foo restaurants and you get the little tiny plate for $40. Oh, it makes me so mad. I want to dive my face in there. I see a question here I want to ask you. What is the where to go? Where to go? Where to go? What's the health change that you've experienced since living in Mexico? How has your health changed since living in Mexico?
Well, so the biggest thing I would have to say is that when I moved to Mexico, I threw away all of my scales.
Oh,
I threw away
interesting.
my food scale, I threw away my body weight scale, and that really kind of forced me to say, okay, Elizabeth, you need to figure this thing out because you need to figure out how to work with your body and not overeat and still exercise and do everything that you want to do to be a healthy person. And so I would say that that's probably the biggest shift that I've made. Today, I have no idea how much I weigh. I take pictures every month at the beginning of the month and I kind of look at them to compare. But I know from my clothes how they're fitting,
Yeah.
whether I'm gaining weight or losing weight. And if I gain weight, I know why I'm doing it. It's probably because I'm under a lot of stress and I might be drinking a little bit more wine than usual or
Mm.
having more treats. And so I just cut back a little bit and I go back to my normal size without being hungry. Like that's really super important for me.
It's interesting. It's also interesting that you said not only your regular scale, but your food scale. Now, I would have thought that you would have been pretty adamant about measuring out things like things that may contain sugar or something like that. But no, huh?
Well, no, I mean, I don't really cook with sugar anymore. I've lost
Mm.
the sweet taste. I mean, occasionally.
Oh, there's such an addictive quality to it. Takes a long time to get over that.
Yeah, well, that's kind of that starch tipping point that I was talking
Mm.
about earlier. What many of my clients and I find is that when we start to have a certain amount of sugar, then it's what my clients call the slippery slope.
Mm.
So you have like sugar every day. This happens around the holidays. And then your body starts to crave it.
Mm.
And
Hmm.
so, like, really becoming aware of how much sugar I can have in my diet without feeling those intense cravings. And when I do feel those intense cravings, really kind of backing off from the sugar so that I don't have those cravings and I don't give in to them anymore.
Now, is it um is there any truth to the fact that women crave sugar more than men?
I don't think so.
Huh, okay, interesting. Because I kind of get that from the whole I need a piece of chocolate at the end of every meal type of
Hmm.
thing. A lot of women seem to agree with that.
Yeah. I mean, there may be some hormonal issues like around a woman's cycle that would cause her to want more carbohydrate.
Oh,
But yeah.
okay. Uh, to your business, how are you servicing your clients? I imagine it's all remote now. Well, I don't know. Maybe you got a huge gym over there in Mexico. Maybe it did. Tell me about that, please. What's your biggest challenge doing your business now in Mexico?
Yeah. So, my biggest challenge in doing my business in Mexico is that I want to walk up to people on the street who I think would I could help, um, but I don't want to spoil their vacations.
Ah, that's funny.
Because
That's
no
funny.
one wants to talk about weight loss and health on their vacation, right?
No, no. I've been to Mexico like 4 times, Tijuana, Puerto Vallarta, where you're at, and someplace else, but it's been so sporadic over so many years that I can't answer this. When you're there and you're seeing the townspeople juxtaposed against the Americans, tourists, are the Americans really fat in comparison?
Um,
Well, they're not popping out at you then, apparently.
you know what it is? It's the skin color.
Mm, mhm.
Like Americans and Canadians are very, well,
Light,
untanned
yeah.
is really it. Yeah.
Okay, but physically, we look similar, huh? Because Americans, my God, are so fat on average now. Come on,
Okay, so what's the problem with that?
what's it? Health. We just got through COVID, and all of us, we find out later we're all actually fine if you're under 65 years old and not obese or with other rare comorbidities. It's a big deal when you really think about it.
Well, so
Wait,
okay, let's clear up some misconceptions. The truth is that your body weight does not determine your health. That's a complete misnomer. There are many people who are overweight and completely healthy. Okay. The only way to know if you are unhealthy is through your numbers. Okay.
okay. What
People who
did
are overweight and who are obese do not have a lower mortality rate. And if they do, it's usually because of the bias of the doctors that are not helping their clients because they're blaming their ailments on their weight.
Okay. What are the two? Maybe you said two, but the big numbers that indicate that you got a problem that may or may not be from obesity. I'm thinking that you're talking about blood work numbers, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. So it could be thyroid, it could be blood sugar, diabetes. You know, you have heart attack and heart problems and stuff like that. So,
Okay.
um,
Okay. Well, again, The obesity thing and diabetes, though, are you saying that that doesn't go hand in hand?
It doesn't. It doesn't.
Well, that
No, seriously.
runs counter to everything I've ever heard.
Well, so we do know that here, okay, so here it is. It's not being overweight that causes diabetes. It is what you are consuming. Okay. And why that's important is because people say, well, if you want to lower your diabetes risk, you should lose weight. But really, what we want to do is we want to change how we're eating. Now, how we're eating may also relate to our weight,
Mhm.
but what's lowering the risk of diabetes is actually what we consume. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
How it's
understand.
subtle.
I understand what you're saying. So again, if we're eating processed sugars or is it simple carbohydrates? Is that the way you say it? Like the white
Uh-huh.
pasta and stuff, white bread.
Yeah,
That's going to feed right into the diabetes type of thing.
exactly. But just because someone can, and I see this with my clients all the time, we clean up their diet and they don't lose any weight, but their numbers are perfect. And so to judge a person based on their size is really unfair.
Okay, I follow you on that. I think you can make some br- broad stroke generalizations from it, but I follow you on that. So someone that does want to lose body mass, I mean, would you also agree then you got to burn more calories per day than you take in, correct?
Mm, good question. So, calories in versus calories out for sure is the basis of weight maintenance, weight loss, and weight gain. However, there's also hormones to be
Good
considered.
point.
And as I mentioned before, women specifically are more sensitive to insulin, which what that means is we really need to control our carbohydrate intake. And then we also are more reactive to stress. Now, we cannot use exercise as a form of calories out in that equation. And I
Hmm.
remember when I first learned this, I think my head exploded. I was like, what do you mean we can't use exercise as a form
There's a
of
lot
calories
more to
out?
that story right there. Yeah,
Yeah,
please tell us.
exactly.
Yeah.
So we do that though. And the reason that we don't want to do that is because one, so many of us see then I went out for drinks or I had too much cake or pasta or whatever. And so now I need to work off that
Mm.
indiscretion, right? So many people see exercise as a punishment. And what we
Mm.
want to do instead is exercise is actually a stressor for that hour or half hour or however long you're working out, your body is stressed. What happens though is by intentionally stressing it, you are then in a more relaxed state the other 23 hours of the day. And so, what we really want to do is we want to look at exercise not as a form of calories in versus calories out, but as a form of stress management instead. And so
Oh,
when we can really look at exercise as a form of managing my stress, I do it to take care of myself because I feel so much better afterwards. Then what happens is we're more likely to be able to do it because, again, we're paying attention to how I feel after exercise, getting those endorphins, right?
yeah, yeah,
And feeling good, not only physically, but feeling accomplished and proud of myself that I
yeah,
actually did it.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Mhm.
No, it's good for me. Like I always exercise first thing in the morning and go to the gym where I can just leave it behind. Uh, but for the clarity, it just gives me a lot of clarity in the morning. So that it sounds like I'm doing that right. Back to the hormonal changes that you were talking about. I'm really trying to service the female audience on this,
Mhm.
and I'm just not very good at it. So, uh, c- concerning okay, people, women over 50, and as you say, the hormonal challenges there. Do you recommend that women, maybe most women do this, but get the hormones checked like the blood test kind of thing that most men normally do? Find
Well,
out where you're at?
so most women will get their hormones checked through blood work
Mm,
to be able to know if they're in perimenopause. The technical um, term for being in menopause, actually, menopause is a moment in time.
mhm,
So, how there are three different stages that a woman goes through. Well, there's more than that. There's childbearing years, and then there's pre or perimenopause. And perimenopause is where our hormones are starting to get a little wonky. And what happens then is we start to get irregular cycles. The technical term for a woman in menopause is that she has not had a cycle for a period of 1 year.
mm,
And then she's postmenopausal. So that 1 year mark is actually the menopausal cross point.
mhm.
Okay. So then she's postmenopausal. And then what generally happens is that our hormones are still in flux for the next 5, 6 years or whatever.
Wow.
And then we become postmenopausal.
And weight wise,
Yeah.
how does that affect going from uh menopause,
Perimenopause
premenopause,
or,
perimenopause to postmenopausal? There's a
uh-huh.
5 year period of flux there.
Yeah.
Once you exit that 5 year period,
Hmm.
do you have to start doing some things different nutritionally in order to feel like you're maintaining your old self?
Well, most women will feel the changes in the perimenopausal phase. So
Mm,
that can range. So that's why I say that I work with women 45 and older, but women can go through perimenopause as early as 35.
wow. Okay.
Yeah. And so during that time, they may be experiencing like weight gain, specifically around their middles. And what's happening is there's a drop in estrogen and progesterone. And compared to that, it seems like there's a rise in testosterone, but testosterone is really staying the same. It's just that there's a drop in
Uh,
estrogen. So comparatively, testosterone is heavy or higher. And so where you see with men that men get that belly, women around perimenopause and menopause will also get that belly as well because their weight is shifting and they're having that fat distribution. And so sometimes women won't see a change in the scale weight, but they
mm,
will feel the shift
that's
in
where
their
I'm at.
body.
That's where I'm
Yeah.
at right now. Yeah, 56. It's like, how am I 202 and yet I feel like I'm 212 from 10 years ago? You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Things have
Mhm.
just shifted. Do you recommend hormone replacement therapy then after the postmenopausal period, or do you say, hey, you better see a doctor? That's serious stuff, and you
Yeah,
better.
that's absolutely 100% something that a doctor would be able to talk to your listeners about. Um, what I do is so traditionally, women will go after the weight loss and they'll do regular diets. Women's hormones over the age of 45 are vastly different than how our hormones were as younger women and as men. What's really interesting is that most of the weight loss studies have been done on college aged men. And
Hmm,
so women who are in menopause and perimenopausal years should not be doing the same diets as them because our bodies are so different.
right.
And so what happens is when we go on these diets will take out like one food group or two food groups. And what happens is it completely shifts our hormones. And we don't feel good
Yeah.
because we're cutting out entire food groups. We may have, a lack of energy. We may feel really super hungry, or we may get cravings, or we might not sleep well. So there are 5 different biomarkers that I work with my clients on to regulate those And when we have those regulated, so again, what they are is energy, sleep quality, cravings, appetite, and mood.
Mm.
Okay, so making sure that we don't have like fluctuations in our mood. And the things that influence that are our sleep, which is kind of interesting because sleep is in both of them.
Yeah.
But we know that the less quality sleep we have, the more irritable we're going to be. So we really need to get that under control.
Mhm.
So sleep, stress, eating, and physical activity. And so once we have those together and in the right proportions for my client and her lifestyle, then what happens is those other things go away. So when we manage our stress well, like that belly that we get, that's usually stress related.
Wow.
Um, it can also, and usually we deal with stress through alcohol. And it's not that we can't have alcohol, but maybe we don't drink as much alcohol as we used to.
Right, right. Now, in all of that rundown that you just gave, Lisa and I are both big supplement people. And when
Uh-huh.
she went through all of her, what was that? Taking away the whole diet and bringing it back. I forgot
Yeah.
the word, but
Her elimination diet.
oh, yes, thank you. Uh, in all of that period of time of assessments, she got to find out exactly where she's at and had certain supplements recommended to her and all that. Me, I'm a typical guy. I just do the all natural multivitamin and some DHEA and CoQ10, a couple
Mhm.
things like that. My question is, without going, uh, do you recommend any generic supplements to your five things of diet, exercise, sleep, this kind of thing? Would you also say, I recommend everybody take an all natural multivitamin or something like that? Or do you
Yeah.
think everybody's so different that you better get that checked out with a blood work done first?
Everyone's a little bit different in terms of what supplements they need. Like
Mm,
some people will take magnesium to help them sleep
mm,
or for muscle cramps. Yeah, so there's a whole bunch of supplements. And I work with my clients on a personalized basis to figure out what supplements they would benefit from.
mm.
I do not advocate for a specific brand. I find that that's a conflict of interest. And
Yes.
so I don't say, I think it's a different experience if I say, hey, Barry, take fish oil versus, hey, Barry, you need this fish oil,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
And
That
so,
would be fishy.
exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I recommend that my clients take a multivitamin. I
Mm,
recommend that they take fish oil or algae oil if they're a vegetarian. And then the other thing I recommend is a probiotic so that they have good
mm.
digestion.
Okay. Oh, that's really good advice. Switching a little bit personal here, if I can.
Yeah.
We're starting to wind up, and I'm going to want to talk more about how you work with your clients as we wind up. But you mentioned vaguely, briefly in your bio that you were estranged from your family when moving to Mexico.
Uh huh.
Can you, if whatever you care to explain about that? I would find that very difficult. I think I may have said up front that, oh, my camera went wonky. I think I may have said up front that Mexico appeals to me much more than say Taiwan, because
Mhm.
I want to be back and see my family when I want. I very close to my family. It would be hard to me for me to leave some things on set there or have
Yeah. I
stress
think
there.
that you're fortunate that you are close with your family. I heard a statistic recently that said at any point in time, 25% of adults are estranged from one or more family members.
Yeah,
And
I could see that. As I look across the board at my family and friends, yeah, I could see that. I think
yeah,
it's higher than that, to be honest.
it could be.
Yeah,
And I think that it's something that comes with a lot of shame. We
sure.
generally don't talk about that as a topic of conversation. Um,
You know, a
and
large part of
so
that is the old adage, you can choose your friends, but you can't choose your family.
yes,
And so you can be paired up with some people that you just have friction with that you normally,
Well, right. You don't choose your family. And
Right.
so, yeah, it's important to realize that.
Okay. Uh, so what are holidays like for you? Do you stay in Mexico?
We do. We
Oh,
do.
okay. Okay. That's cool. And let's get back to your business as we start to wind up here. How do you find clients? How do clients find you? What would a new client expect from you in a week? 2 hours worth of something or 2 hours a day worth of something? I don't know.
Yeah, so I work with my clients on a weekly basis.
Mm.
And uh so we meet anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour. And at the very beginning of when we meet, we figure out where they are, like what are they doing well, where do they feel like they need to improve, and then we also set a vision of what they want to accomplish within our work together.
Mm.
And what that does then is it gives us what I call a gap analysis. So we have habits, we have skills that then they need to learn in order to become this future version of themselves. And so then throughout our work together, we just chip away at each of those skills and habits. And then at the beginning of our call, you talked about limiting beliefs.
Mm.
And what happens then is each week we assign tasks or habits to accomplish. So let's say that it's, for example, um, let's say that it's eating 3 servings of vegetables every single day for the week. And you'll come back to me and you'll say, Elizabeth, I did great. I nailed it. Fantastic. Or you might come back and say, well, I did great for 5 days, but then the weekend happened and I kind of had 2 on one day. And then Sunday, just I didn't eat any vegetables. So then we get to figure out, well, what was the problem? Was it that you didn't plan for the vegetables? Did you not have them on hand? Do we need to create processes? Do we like what's going on? Or were we just being a petulant child, which we
Mm.
all do, right?
Yes.
Where we're like, I just didn't want to eat them. So then I get to coach my clients around, okay, so why didn't you want to eat the vegetables? What do those represent to you?
That just made me think the entire time that you're talking about that, most of us deal with little bouts of depression, at least from time to time. And when you get there, things get so hard to identify. If you say, why didn't you eat those vegetables? I'm just picturing half the people that you're talking to don't know why, don't know how to express to you why. And maybe they're feeling just bad about themselves a little bit. And maybe they roll with that. It's a bit of depression. And I've had podcasts on here recently and guests talking about depression. It just seems to be such a mysterious and hard to pin down kind of a thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Well, I am going to leave all of your links in the notes for our audience, such as the host to podcast host, Done with Dieting, and ElizabethSherman.com. What is your most popular social media channels?
I am having so much fun doing reels on Instagram, but you can
Okay.
also find me on Facebook at Total Health by Eliz. Yeah.
Okay. I
And
didn't get
Instagram
Facebook.
is eSherman68.
Got that one. And I'm sorry, what was the Facebook?
Total Health by Eliz.
Okay. And okay, gotcha. Okay, with that, any parting words for us, Elizabeth? I really appreciated this, and on a number of different levels, you gave me a lot of insight. So I
Yeah.
really
No,
appreciate it.
this was totally fun. I'd love to come back and talk to your female listeners some more.
I would love that as well. Okay, have a great day. Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody. Go to over50startingover.com to sign up. And